Hey, welcome to the Next Wave podcast. I'm Matt Wolf, and I'm here once again with Maria Garib. And recently, we sent Maria over to London to chat with Victor, the CEO of Synthesia. So we're going to play that interview in a minute. But first, I wanted to just kind of chat really quickly with Maria about what you chatted about with Victor. So I'm just curious, like, real quickly, like, what is Synthesia, and like, what was like the most interesting thing? Like, what did you want to go and talk with Victor about related to Synthesia?
Before we go into what we spoke about with Victor, I really want to say, like, I think the second I walked into the HQ, you know that you've like entered like Nordic final boss aesthetics. The place is so calm. It is so clean. It's like so space adjacent that I genuinely just check to make sure that I'm not, into like a sci-fi drama, about emotional, intelligent astronauts or something. It was so serene, so polished. They feng shuied the future into that place. And I swear, like, I feel like you'd feel like air molecules were like arranged with intentions when it comes to that. And yeah, they put me in front of their cameras, and like they capture like you have to capture everything so that I can make an AI avatar of me. And there's one in the wild right now, roaming around, and she's pretty fun. She's funnier than me, and she speaks 140 languages. I speak 3 only, which is wild.
Well, that's 2 more than me, so.
And like I saw her on the screen, I was like, wow, like, is she my coworker? Is she my intern? Is she another version? Is she my replacement? Should I be writing right now? But yeah, I liked it so much, and after we did the AI avatar, I sat down with Victor Rapavelli, who is the CEO of Synthesia, and like we got into the real stuff, Express 2, Progress, which is one of their products, and like multilingual tone matching, and like real business workflow, and the future of video. And he has a whole TED talk talking about the future of video and how, everything's going to be video rather than you kind of having piles and piles of like memos and trainings, and like no one wants to read that, and having a whole video actually makes every task 10 times better. So yeah, I went in like extremely curious, and I went out and I was like, my mind was blown by the amount of stuff that is in there.
When I think of Synthesia, in fact, there's HeyGen and there's Synthesia, and I heard about Synthesia like way before I ever heard of HeyGen. Like I feel like they were around even longer. My impression of them is you go in, you train your own face. I don't think you have to go in to like their place and get scanned in, but you're gonna get like a way better model.
They can do it online, obviously. Like I was imagining like I would have like cameras everywhere, kind of beaming out on me. It was just like a screen thing, like it was like in front of me, and obviously you have to consent to that, and they do like a whole consent thing. So,
but that's their main thing, right? Is they sort of make like an AI avatar clone of you that you can then use in your videos. Or one of the cool things about tools like Synthesia, in my opinion, is the ability to make videos of you saying things at scale. Like one of the really cool use cases I've seen is like, let's say you have like an email newsletter, which I know you do. You can actually, when somebody signs up to your newsletter, you can actually send them a video that's like customized to them. That's like,
100%.
Hey Mark, thanks so much for signing up for Mindstream. And it looks like a video of you welcoming them to the newsletter,
Just like every single time someone signs up to our newsletter, like send something kind of like personalized, and like have a coffee with them without even realizing, that they're not seeing the real me. It was so cool. I'm not joking. That place, I'm pretty sure people like, I think he gives them the opportunity to work remote, but everyone goes to the office because the office is so cool.
Look, everyone's talking about AI video tools right now. Runway, Kling, Veo, Sora, they all claim to be the best. So we actually tested them head to head. Same prompts, same budget, real results. And honestly, some of these tools are way overhyped. If you want to know which AI video tool actually delivers the best bang for your buck, grab our AI Video Showdown Guide. Scan the QR code or click the link in the description. Now, let's get back to the show.
Before we jump into the interview, what is your take on like the AI avatar stuff? Like very similar to AI video, I kind of have like mixed feelings about it. Like I think it would be really, really valuable for things like what we just talked about, like making an automated like welcome video to everybody that signs up for your newsletter. Like that to me is a really fun use case. But then there's also the other side of it where it comes to like we've already seen scams where people have like cloned Mr. Beast and then put ads out online that looked like Mr. Beast was endorsing a product. And we've seen the same thing with Joe Rogan, where people have cloned him and made ads that made it look like he was endorsing products. And so like when it comes to the AI avatar thing, I'm very like mixed emotions about it, right? Like I see the powerful use cases for a business owner, for a influencer, for a creator, but I also see like there's some scary implications here as well. What's your take on that?
I think that it's going to make our lives 10 times easier. I think Victor did say it in one of the TED Talks, like rather than you teaching your kid about math and like I don't want to sit down and teach my child about math.
Right.
I don't think I have the mental capacity not to pull my own hair and set the house on fire if I was teaching my child. I don't have children yet, and I'm like having nightmares about this. So I feel like
I have children that I've had to teach math, and I still have nightmares about it. Yeah, your concerns are valid. Well, awesome. I'm super excited to listen to this interview of you and Victor. So let's go ahead and listen to the interview.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thanks for having us. I wanted to actually catch your attention on something because I was watching your interviews yesterday and I saw that you liked sci-fi a lot. So I want to see your perspective about the future of videos in general.
Well, when we found the company in 2017, there was like two big ideas that the company thesis revolved around. The first one was that with AI, we increasingly can generate content with AI, not just analyze data with AI, which a lot of people forget that that's how most people thought about AI, like not that long ago. That would drive the marginal cost of producing content, specifically video for us, to zero. And what that means is not just in dollars, right? How much does it cost to create a video, but also the time required and the skill required to create video. That, of course, has huge implications for the media ecosystem, right? We've seen what happened when text and writing became completely democratized, right? Like when we had computers and the internet, you can sit in your bedroom and you can write a book on your computer, you can publish it on your computer. You never need to actually leave your house, right? And that gave us the internet. But there was a time where actually to publish something in writing, you have to have like a typewriter, you need to have a printing press, and it was a very, very long, laborious process.
And loud, yeah.
Yeah, to create something, right? And that's kind of what video is like today. We still need to run around the real world. We have actors, studios, cameras, all these kind of things. I think we're in the early days of this, but we're already seeing the immense power of that, right? Like you're seeing people create amazing things that would never have been possible before without multi-million-dollar budgets. And that's only going to accelerate. So that in itself, I think, is a big idea. The other big idea, which what we're kind of getting into now, is where it gets probably like a little bit more sci-fi in some ways, which is when we invent new media technologies as humans, we always invent media formats which are native to those technologies. So the really interesting question, right, is like, what does video look like in the age of AI? Right now, most AI video is essentially using new technologies to create old media formats. But that's kind of changing now as we're launching our new agent product, which is video you can talk to.
Right.
So instead of you just like passively sitting through what is essentially like a broadcast, you can engage with the video. It could be as simple as you can ask the video a question if there's something you felt like haven't been answered in a marketing video, for example. But it can also be if you're doing a training, for example, that you can actually go in and practice whatever you just learned with a kind of AI tutor or AI role play, as we call it, right? So if it's a sales training, you just learned about the new pricing policy in your region. And instead of just hoping that you watch the video and you remember everything, you could now go into like a 15-minute role play where the AI agent pretends to be a customer and you have to overcome objections, answer questions. And then after you're done with that session, it could go into coaching mode where you can say, hey, you did really well on area XYZ, but over here you maybe want to read up on like these articles out here. So that's like the first foray into this, right? But I really think it's going to be a world in which video is going to be much more interactive, personalized, and conversational, which is going to open up like a very new way of like, in our world, a lot of like communicating with customers and prospects, etc., but also like learning and training and
I would rather honestly watch a video, like a tutorial. My car broke down in Lebanon and I had to watch a YouTube video and have to fix that because I'm not going to read the manual. So I want to, start off also with Express 2, which is insane right now. It's everyone's, you guys are talking about it. What are people actually using it for, in the outside?
So what we've seen is like, since we invented the first avatar technology in 2020, back then the quality was way, way, way lower than what it is today. And we've, of course, gone through like multiple kind of step changes in like the quality of the avatars. And generally what we see is just that the better the quality of the avatars, the more creative people get with it and the more use case we unlock. So on the one end of the scale, right, like people are not yet making like Super Bowl ads with avatars yet. That just doesn't make sense, right? The quality is not as good. You don't have as much control as you would have if you filmed it with a real thing. On the other hand, in 2020, when we launched the first iteration of the avatars, they were only good enough for like low stakes internal training content. Very few customers would put it on their website. Then we've gone through this interesting transition where I think with Express 2 most recently, most customers are now very comfortable using them in public-facing materials. And it's just because it just looks and feels more natural, right? And that just means that you can use it for more things that are more kind of high stakes, right?
Right. That sounds great, actually. And I love when, tech behavior goes slightly out of the norm, because that's what we really wanted to see in the hands of actual real people. But what's the most like pleasantly weird or surprisingly weird thing that you've seen people use AI with?
I think we see a lot of I think we just really see the breadth of like people in all sizes of companies and individuals need to communicate a lot of things every single day, right? And video is such a powerful medium to do it. And so one of my favorite examples, which is like very early on, was like when we just opened up the platform, there was like a barber shop in Brazil somewhere who'd made like avatar videos about like the different haircuts you could get, which is like very niche. And so that's like one of the scale, right? If you look at more in the corporate world and where we operate today, one of my recent favorite examples is UBS, a big bank in the US, right? Who have, I think, around 200 analysts who have their own avatar. And these analysts essentially communicate to their customers about like the markets, investment opportunities, etc. And they used to do this with text, right? But now they switched to doing that with video. And the magical thing is, of course, that video is a better means of communication, but they can communicate with video at more or less the same effort as it would be to communicate in text, right? And kind of like lowering that gap is really what massively expands the market size for these kind of technologies, right? If it's as easy to create something in video as it is to make a slide or to write an email, then a lot more people will naturally use video for many more things in the business.
Right. And what do you say to the people that keep, because you said it also, like I heard you say it, but like we really want to remind people that say that our attention spans are getting shorter. What do you say to these people?
Yeah. So I had a controversial talk about this, right? Where I kind of proposed that maybe it's not just because our brains are turning into like brain rot, which I think is like what most people's kind of instinct is. It's just if you go back in history, right? People have felt the same way about like radio novels when they were first, became a thing, right?
Right.
Parents would say, kids have no attention span. They're just lying in their room. So let's do this like low quality radio novel content. They should be out there like reading, real books, whatever. There's a counter idea, which is that maybe it's just because we have so much content available to us, and we're so used to only consuming like the best of the best content. And you can of course argue on like how you measure that, but things that keep our attention, that we just don't have a lot of attention for content that's like way too long, way too wordy, and not very interesting, right? If I want to learn about something, and as someone who loves reading, I can buy a book on Amazon, and that's probably going to be like 250 pages. Not necessarily because 250 pages is like the right amount of pages to learn about this topic, but because you cannot write a book that's 50 pages long. You can't sell it, right? It needs to be longer for you to actually sell it. It's probably going to be outdated. And so it's like, why would I spend the time reading 250 pages if I can watch like an amazingly well-produced YouTube video that takes half an hour, right? For most people, you learn better like that. So I think there's a lot of like right critiques around like social media and like, kind of what floats to the top of the content pyramid.
Right.
But I just think that things are rarely like as simple as we make it out to be. And I think there is this like narrative right now, right? Like everything to do with like watching videos online is like a bad thing. It offers more creativity to people who want to tell stories, want to communicate. And I think for a lot of people, they prefer that. And if you don't prefer it, then that's also completely fine.
Exactly. I mean, you can have both. You can have the choice, as we said. So for anyone who's like played with avatars, like knows that the demos are very pristine. And then you try it yourself and like suddenly your digital twin kind of looks like an NPC or like you don't like it. If you had to pick one kind of thing that matters most for realism, what's the big lever?
I think a lot of it comes to the body language. Like the earlier versions of these technologies, they had this like bit strange body language. And I think as humans, we're just like, we're so sensitive to even like the slightest imperfections, right? Like, when you're like babies learn to recognize faces as like the first thing. It's such an important like way of like being a human. It's like they were very sensitive to these kind of things, right? Which is why when you go to a lot of Hollywood films, even though they spend like millions of dollars on creating digital humans, it still feels off because it just doesn't look like the real thing. And AI kind of bridged that gap because instead of a human sitting down defining what a human looks like, we can learn it from the data.
Right.
But even the slight imperfections, and there's still like a few left, right? They kind of like stick out to people. And once people notice it once, it's very hard to like not notice it. And then they have to like increase the quality again.
Right.
So I think it is a lot of these like small things that gives people a sense of unease. But I think, to be honest, I think like where we are right now, we're very, very close to have narrowed that gap.
Yeah. So like when someone goes like, it doesn't feel like me, what's your go-to adjustment when it comes to that other than body language? Like what do you tell them, like kind of like a practical fix for that?
So I think the algorithm's getting a lot better, like reducing, variety and like how avatars come out. but you can always try and record it again. You can submit more data for the voice, for example. Like if your voice doesn't sound right, that's usually a big thing. So actually for a lot of people have the problem where they like the visuals, but their voice would have the wrong accent. And that's actually, sounds like a small thing, but it's a huge thing, right? Like if you live in the US, for example, and you have a Midwestern accent in real life, but your avatar has like a New York accent, you're not gonna wanna use it, right? Even though it can seem minor. So we actually trained a voice model, our own technology, which is specifically trained to preserve accents. And it works phenomenally well, tests like, way better than any other providers out there. And that is one of those things that like actually helps plug the gap, because if it sounds like you and looks like you, it's gonna be right. But if you have an accent, it's like I don't have a British or American accent. I have a Danish accent because I grew up in Denmark, and so it's weird if I get a British accent, right? So it is a lot of those like small nuances that really do the trick. Yeah.
If mine doesn't know how to say hummus, I will not be happy, by the way. Just FYI. Also, it supports like 140 languages. I think it's more now, is it?
Yeah, it's more than, including like all the accents and that kind of thing. I think it's actually almost more than 200.
And I obviously speak 3, but I still need to Google Translate to my mother because my mother speaks 2. So like accuracy is one thing, emotional stuff is a harder thing. How do you keep the feeling consistent across all languages other than the accents?
Yeah. Well, the accent is like...
Because the tone is different though.
Yeah, the accent is very important. I would say the machine translation. So like there's like one is like, how does it sound? Does it sound like you, of course? And then the other one is like the actual translation. And I think the actual translation has gotten a lot better in recent years. We don't develop that technology in-house. We partner with other people there. It has gotten really good, but most of the time you still want to look through to see if it's done like the translation correctly. I think ours is like better than Google Translate, but it's like sometimes with Google Translate you can get like sentences which sounds like grammatically they're correct in whatever target language.
It's a nightmare.
But no one would ever say that in real life.
It's a nightmare,
right?
yeah.
And I don't think technologies there are like 100% solved for that yet. But actually using LLMs and like GPT for this sort of stuff to correct it is proven to be like very, very good.
So, let's talk about outcomes. What are the top 3 use cases where avatars actually earn their keep, and where a team, the team goes like, this paid off?
So, I mean, it depends a lot from team to team, right? I think what we generally see is like the sort of first order effect is a lot about like just reducing cost of creating video, very simply, right? If you're not using avatars and AI to create videos, it's a lot more expensive. And so what we generally see is that you can kind of begin to move budget away from external agencies or internal agencies, and you can allow the actual team to create the content itself. So that is first and foremost cheaper, but it's also much, much, much faster, right? If you always have to go through like a different department,
it takes less time, doesn't it?
It takes a lot of time, which means people create less content. And that we see, customers like Heineken, Zoom, who all, have put numbers essentially to like how much time do you actually save by using AI instead of using real cameras, right? So I think that's like one really great example. You also have customers like BSH, which does a lot of training content. They've seen an increase in 30% in the engagement of that content, which when you're a company with like many, many thousands of employees, right, that's a really, really key business metric. Because ultimately, if you take half an hour out of someone's day to train them on something that's business critical, you want to make sure that they actually remember it, right?
Yeah.
They don't just like sit through it and forget it, because then they might as well spend that half an hour on doing something else that's productive. So it depends a lot on like the different use cases, like how people, measure it ultimately. But it is generally about like cost, engagement, and speed of creation.
I love that. So let's say we drop Synthesia in like a 100-person agency with like 0 instructions. If they want to fast wins, like where should they start? Where do they start off with?
Yeah. So I think a lot of, one good way to start is like looking at all different communications that you have as a company, right? And there's going to be a bunch of like really important like marketing and brand moments. Like maybe you're running TV ads, you're running YouTube ads, you're doing Super Bowl, whatever, right? That kind of content is probably not where you want to use Synthesia. There It probably makes sense to invest in, create a really, really awesome video with camera and actors, etc. Where it becomes much more interesting is this kind of middle layer of communication, right? So this is usually where a lot of like PowerPoint content would live. You take a deck to a customer to explain about a new product feature. You have a deck probably when you onboard new people in your sales team for them to learn about like how to sell the product, how to take pricing policy, whatever. And in this kind of layer where there's a lot of PowerPoints, that's where video can be a really, really powerful replacement, right? Because videos can be consumed asynchronously, and they have much higher information retention. People are generally much more engaged with video. And so what we see successful companies do, right, is they actually focus more on like replacing documents, wiki pages, PowerPoints with video than necessarily like going all the way to like your most important brand moments, which I think, it'll get there eventually, but I think the technology needs like a year or two more before it really is able to produce it like that level of quality. But for us as a company, we also think that this middle layer of the content pyramid is actually more interesting because there's so much more content there, right? If you think about how many like marketing videos a company creates every single year versus how many PowerPoints they create, like the differential is absolutely gigantic, right? And so generally it's like, where are we communicating with text or slides today, where we want to be more efficient?
So what do you think, like, what's the rookie mistake, because there's always one. What's the rookie mistake that people make when it comes to that?
I think it's actually like trying to be overly ambitious of like, let's create like a big advertising campaign with Synthesia, Like that's just not what the technology really is like developed for. And it's not really where it's the most impactful yet. So I think one of the things we always have internally in Synthesia is like a mantra called utility over novelty, which that, I think there's a lot of AI products, AI companies right now that promise a lot of things that don't actually materialize. We try and be the opposite with our customers. We always try and be like, hey, the technology will get very, very good. It will be able to do all these things that you're dreaming about. But for where this industry and this technology is today, these are some of the use cases that make sense right now, right? And that is very much about like communication, like product marketing, customer support videos, training videos. Like that's what the technology really works. And if you try and push it too much, it can become a bit too much of like an innovation project or like something that isn't really going to deliver like a real ROI back. And sometimes that's okay, you want to experiment, but we always try and help our customers towards like, where do you actually get like real tangible ROI today?
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah. So let's say political plus civic sensitivity and like sensitive content, it's very gated to enterprise and like custom avatars. Where do you draw the line? How do you draw the line? And what does safeguard actually mean here?
So this has always been very important. Like since we founded the company in 2017, we have this ethical framework called the 3 Cs: consent, control, and collaboration. Yeah. Consent is just about like not creating avatars of people without their consent, which you would think is like baseline for all, every platform offering this kind of technology. Unfortunately, it isn't. Control is about content moderation. So we take a strong stance what you can and cannot create. I'm not gonna lie, it's a really, really hairy thing to get right because there's a lot of opinions, right? Like what is one person's, fake news is another person's truth. What is one person's scam is another person's like risky investment opportunity and so on. The way we've done it is we have like 3 categories of content. We have the green content, which is self-explanatory. We have the red content, so that'd be like hate speech, violence, things like, I think almost everyone would agree we don't want that. Or it gets much harder, right? It's in this messy middle where it's like you're talking about politics. Maybe you're talking about like cryptocurrency investments or all these things which are like highly contentious and everybody will probably have different opinions on like where to draw the line. What we've done up until now is we've been kind of probably a little bit overly restrictive, you could say. So we've just been like erring on the side of like, let's not allow things that are potentially controversial because these technologies are still very new. I definitely think that's going to change over the years as these technologies become more part of like our daily life.
Right.
But right now, for example, we don't allow things like news content unless you're like an enterprise plan. So current events, politics, we're also pretty restrictive around, even some legal categories like gambling, investments.
Right. And do you have someone that kind of like sort of oversees these information in terms?
Yeah, it's kind of like a product internally moderation. So we have like both engineers working on it, of course, but we also have a team that essentially owns like the policies. And when we detect content that looks like it's breaking our content policies, they will be the ones who like review, look at the customer, talk to the customer, and figure out like if it is within the content policy or not within the content policy.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I imagine you have like to protect against misuse without strangling creativity. How do you hold both of those without going crazy?
I don't think you can hold both. I think we are definitely giving up some level of creativity.
Okay.
And also probably you could argue like some level of growth potentially that we could potentially grow faster, like on our self-service businesses, we allowed more content in, but like we think it's the right decision. I also think long-term it is also good business because when we speak to the enterprise, people want to work with companies that they trust and companies that kind of do well, right? And I think that's not something that is as immediate as like just opening up the floodgates and getting revenue in from people who maybe have more creative use case, but I think the long term is one of those things, as a founder, you choose to invest in, and I feel good about it, both from a business perspective, but also from a moral perspective.
So I want to go through, data and like license data in general, because everyone talks about it and everyone has concerns. So let's say you license data from partners like Shutterstock, which is extremely rare for Gen AI, honestly, in terms of the Gen AI world. From a product perspective, how does that show up? Like, better training signals, like more safety, performance gains?
I think it's just you want to make sure that in the training data set you have like high quality data, because higher quality input means higher quality output. And so it's great that you can partner with companies like Shutterstock, for example, like get this data in.
Yeah, that sounds cool. So let's say with lawsuits like that storming around like OpenAI, Anthropic, Perplexity, do you think like licensing becomes the standard path, or like is this more of like a we're ready, everyone else will catch up later kind of situation?
It's hard to say. I think the world will convene on not regulating the inputs to the models, assuming it's public available data, but regulating the outputs of the models, which means that if you're like one of the big LLM providers, for example, it's going to be less about what data you put into it and more the fact that it cannot spit out content which could be copyright, right? So you can't make it create an image of like Mickey Mouse, for example, because that's copyrighted. You should be able to create images or videos of like celebrities or other things that are in the data set. But I mean, we'll see how kind of all of this nets out. But I think when you look at the lawsuits and where they are currently, my kind of sense is that obviously it's not going to be okay to use data that's not available on the public internet. There was a ruling recently which at least put it in the direction of like it's going to be deemed for the greater common good that you can use content that's available online, but you have to make sure that you regulate the outputs.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think you can't really right now also generate pictures of like, let's say, political figures on Midjourney till this day. It's I tried to do it for the newsletter and it's just like it banned me for like a day, which hurt my feelings, but that's okay. So let's say like, in terms of like talent and like future, like with AI, you can just show what you're capable of instead of like telling a recruiter about it. Do you think portfolios are quietly replacing resumes right now? Should I send like an avatar of me?
I think as an engineer, like an AI researcher, is obviously different because you'll have like a publishing history of like papers and so on that you've published before, which is going to be like a very important part of like getting a job anywhere. But I don't think actually like that much change. I still think your resume matters. I still think that you probably don't want to send an avatar to your job interview just yet, maybe at some point. But I think it's actually, as to my comments earlier on, like you have to use the technology where it like actually makes sense and not where it doesn't make sense. I think in an interview, right, like you want to show up, you want to show the real authentic you, and that you're excited about the job. Maybe in the future, it'll be two avatars interviewing each other, and you'll just like get a notification when your avatar got a job for you. But
that would be so helpful, honestly, rather than go through the interview process over and over. So where do avatars fit into in terms of, that? I've seen my fair share of people like go through online and like they have to go through the video thing and like they stopped sending their resumes. Now it's just strictly videos. Do you think that would be like what people are going to use that specifically?
Yeah, so actually with our own agent product, that's going to be one of the capabilities you're going to be able to do, right? Like give someone a case study live on a call, for example, which instead of, as you said, submitting a portfolio, is actually also a much more fair way of interviewing people, because I think what happens a lot today is that, your companies will open a job, you'll get 10,000 applications in like, 2 days. Yeah. And you cannot like realistically sift through all of those different people, right? And so the way that the TA teams have to do it is they have to be very quick. And unfortunately, the best way of being very quick is like looking at purely the CV of that person, right? And so I think what this will enable is actually make it more fair, because it's going to be more like, let's give everyone the chance, if they want to talk to an agent for 10 minutes and go through like a case study. And then you can look at that as a signal in relation to the CV, right? So I think it's going to be great for candidates. I think it's going to be great for companies who will also, get a bigger talent pool of more diverse talent that doesn't necessarily like have the top 5 top logos, and they just purely select based off that.
Yeah. So basically talent-based, but through the videos. Yeah. So I want to move into the future, like 3 years from now. What's the moment you're building towards that most people don't see it coming right now?
I think it is very much about like evolving video into something that's like different. And it is going to be this idea that you can kind of talk to a video, right? And it's going to be able to take on like so many different roles. It's going to be the thing that can be your tutor if you're trying to learn something. If it's a kid, maybe it's like a teacher, right? So
yeah, parents will have less anger issues. That would be so cool.
They probably will. The kids will learn faster because they'll be able to, ask questions, and they'll be able to, if your kid loves soccer, Then it can explain math problems in terms of like, soccer-based personalization. Like it's gonna be all this stuff that's gonna be such a different experience to like what it is today. And I think I think a lot of people right now, we're all having kind of that experience with ChatGPT, where it becomes a very, very different way of learning things, right? And I mean, searching the internet in some sense, where like, most people today, I think if you have something that's not like, trying to find the address of a restaurant or something, a lot of people today, including myself, will like ask ChatGPT, and then you will ask follow-up questions, and you'll ask another follow-up question. You're having almost more like a conversation with your computer, right? It's very different than in the past, which is not really that long ago, where you would like Google something, you would go to a website, you would try and read what is on the website. If it wasn't what you're looking for, you go back and click another website, look at that. And that's kind of how we watch videos today, right? Like you search for something, you watch a video, you hope it's the right thing, and if it's not, you go back and find another one. But this is going to be much more like moldable to you, right? So you start watching a video, like you start a conversation with ChatGPT, and then it's going to be an experience that goes like that.
I'm a foreigner here, so I've never really used the tube before. That was my first time using the tube. When I got to London, I had to watch like a kind of like a walkthrough of how to use the tube, and that's how I learned. Honestly, I would never use these apps ever again. So, if you started again, if you're building, Synthesia for, you're building Synthesia for 8 years, if you wanted to start today with like the same brain, like with new blank page, what other AI frontier would you chase?
I'm not sure we'll start another AI company right now, because I think I like weird fringe ideas, which Synthesia certainly was back when we started the company. I think I'm just like on a personal level, I'm just like, I find those like very interesting. So I think I would look more at like what's not consensus right now. I don't think you'll find a single person in the world right now, more or less, who doesn't think AI is going to be the future and AI is going to change everything that we do. It doesn't mean there's not lots of opportunities there. I just think for me personally, I would probably look more towards like, I think there's a lot of interesting happens in like bio, for example. I don't know, things like, I think nuclear is a very interesting area right now. The whole like energy, not crisis, but like the energy needs of the future is going to be insane.
Yeah.
And I think there we're going to need a lot of like new solutions, both hardware and software.
So if you could teach one skill that genuinely like future-proofs people into the AI world, what would it be? And, I'm not kind of like, I want an actual answer on that. I don't want a polite one. I want like a real cutthroat one.
Yeah.
If you can find one.
I think critical thinking, being able to like read something and, not just accept it for what it is, but try and critique it, try and find other sources that think something different or that confirms it. I think increasingly that's going to be like one of the most valuable human skills.
Yeah.
That and creativity. I think what's clearly happening right now is that a lot of the hard skills like creating an app, for example, right? Like software development in 5 years' time is going to be something that most people are going to be able to do, kind of like by just chatting to the computer. You don't have to actually be able to write code. But the problem is you still have to figure out what to build. And I think people often forget that a really hard part, like building a successful app or company or product, is not just like actually making it, it's coming up with the right idea for what is worth building, right? I think that comes comes back to,
like
critical thinking, being able to, think creatively and figure out like what is a good solution to some problem that's out there in the world. So
looking ahead, what's out there for Synthesia?
Well, there's so much to go still. The big thing for us in this short-term future is like putting out agents. From there, it's going to be both doubling down on that, but it's also going to be a lot about helping people the creative process. So today, making a Synthesia video is like kind of like making a PowerPoint presentation. We have some agents that can help you like write the script, put the visuals together. But what we eventually want Synthesia to be is that it's kind of like working with like a really, really good video editor that can just do whatever you want, right? So that you can create like really high quality, great, informative content in just like a few minutes. And there's still a lot of things to do there in terms of us helping you with kind of agents on doing that. And then there's like just the better models, what we're seeing now with Express 2 is a huge step up, but there's going to be, levels after that as well. To the point where creating something that looks like a Spielberg film, even for like a simple training video, is going to be very possible for most people, right? I think we're getting very close to that. It's very exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was awesome. I think we covered everything. So thanks for having us.